Better than Wilt Chamberlain when he averaged 50 points per game? Better than Kobe Bryant when he scored 81 points in a game and outscored a strong Dallas Mavericks team by himself? That's right. For reasons we're about to discuss, Micheal Jordan had the greatest scoring season in NBA history. When did this happen? This was in the 1986-87 season when he averaged 37.1 points per game. Let's first start with a statistical case. He recorded the highest points per game average by any player since the NBA/ABA merger, which occurred in the 1976-77 season. If we account for all of history, it's the 5th highest points per game average. He also racked up the 3rd most total points scored for a single season. He scored a total of 3,041 points. The only other player to score over 3,000 points in a season is Wilt Chamberlain. Then we have this other impressive scoring feat. For most players, scoring over 40 points in a game would be one of the highlights of their season. But for MJ, it was considered a disappointment when he didn't score that much. He was able to score 40 or more points in 37 games. That's nearly half of the season. That is the 3rd most ever, behind only Wilt Chamberlain's 1962 and 1963 seasons. But that's not all. There were also 8 games where he scored 50 points or more. His season high was 61 points, which he did twice against the Atlanta Hawks and the Detroit Pistons. We'll talk more about that game later in this video. Here's another crazy accomplishment that Jordan had this season. Do y'all remember when Kobe Bryant scored 40 or more points in 9 consecutive games in the 2002/03 season? Well, Micheal did the same thing. He scored 40 or more points in 9 straight games. After that historic streak, his arms got tired from all that shooting, and he was held to 11 points by the Milwaukee Bucks, which ended the streak. So just for good measure, he had 2 straight 40-point games that could have pushed his streak to 12 games. Speaking of sensational scoring streaks, Jordan also scored 50 or more points in 3 straight games. By the way, the only other player to match or surpass that streak in the modern era is Kobe Bryant. He scored 50 or more in 4 consecutive games in 2007. The numbers do not lie. What he did in that season was nothing short of historic, and we haven't seen anything like it since. But it's not just the numbers that make this season so impressive. Take into consideration the team that he was playing for. The Chicago Bulls were not a talented team by any stretch of the imagination. That was proven in the previous year when Jordan missed all but 64 games due to a broken foot. They had a 30-52 record. But that's not the only thing. Check out the roster from the 1985-86 Chicago Bulls. Take a look at their 4 leading scorers for the season. Their leading scorer was Orlando Woolridge. He was traded to the New Jersey Nets in the offseason for a 2nd-round draft pick. Next up, we have Quinton Dailey. He was their 2nd leading scorer, but he left to play for the Los Angeles Clippers. Their next leading scorer was the legendary George Gervin, but he left to play overseas in Italy. Now we have their 4th leading scorer, Sidney Green. He was also traded away for pieces that would end up being of no use to the Chicago Bulls. So this team that wasn't talented to begin with lost all of their best scorers. Who was called upon to help MJ on the offensive end? It was Charles Oakley, who was only in his 2nd season. That was a team that Micheal Jordan was stuck with. I know we like to make fun of how bad the 2006 Lakers were, but this was way worse. If you don't believe me, check out what some of the media members were saying about this team during the season. Roy Johnson of the New York Times called the Bulls talent poor, and that their season will all come down to exhibitions of 1-on-5 basketball. Curry Kirkpatrick of Sports Illustrated wrote that the Bulls were a collection of untested rookies, veteran rejects, and Jordan. He also wrote that if Jordan concentrated on passing to the other Bulls, Chicago might finish 20-62 or 0-82. The Bulls were undeniably the least talented team in the league, and their losing record reflects that. The only way that they could remain competitive was for Micheal Jordan to win games by himself. For nearly half the time, that's exactly what he did against professional basketball teams. The opposition knew that the Bulls had no one else that could generate offense. Even with every team putting all their attention on stopping Jordan, he still managed to nearly shoot over 50% from the field. But that's not the only factor that makes his efficiency so impressive. It should also be noted that he was playing high-intensity basketball on both ends of the court. He would make this incredible move at one end and then stop your best perimeter player at the other end. In fact, the numbers suggest that he was arguably the best perimeter defender in the NBA. For example, he averaged 2.9 steals per game, which was second in the league. He finished first among all guards in blocks. He had a 1.5 blocks per game average. In this regard, he made history. He became the first player to have more than 200 steals and 100 blocks in a season. Since then, only Hakeem Olajuwon and Scottie Pippen have been able to accomplish this feat. He also finished 4th in defensive win shares and 7th in defensive box plus minus. He wasn't like other players who only play one side of the floor to save energy. He was doing it all for this team. Take for example his performance against the 76ers when he had 56 points and 8 steals. Or his game against the Cavaliers when he had 43 points, 8 steals, and 5 blocks. But of all of his incredible performances, his favorite one came against the bad boy Pistons. Why is that? This is what he said to Sports Illustrated. Quote, "Because we won, and because I switched onto Adrian Dantley in the last few minutes, stole the ball 3 times, and held him without a basket. A victory for defense." End of quote. This was a game where he finished with 61 points on 56% shooting, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. And you wonder why they invented the Jordan rules. It's because they had no answer for him. That is why I believe this is the greatest scoring season of all time. It was his aggressive mindset, his artistic expression, and the degree of difficulty of all the points that he scored. But can we really say that it's better than Wilt's 1962 season when he averaged 50.4 points per game? Well, consider this. The Philadelphia Warriors that season averaged 131.1 possessions per game. If you would have guessed, that was the most out of any team that year. The Chicago Bulls in '87 averaged 95.8 possessions per game, which was last in the league. That's over 35 extra possessions that were giving Wilt. Yeah, it's no wonder that he broke countless records that season. Jordan, on the other hand, played at a much more modern setting. In fact, it's even slower than what the league is playing today. Teams averaged 99.1 possessions per game in 2023. Just imagine what he could have done in today's league. Maybe he would have broken the 40 points per game barrier. That's how dangerous of a scorer he was. In my opinion, it's the best that we've ever seen. But what about you all? Do you think Micheal's 1987 season should be considered the greatest scoring season ever? Who would you have at number 1? And what do you remember the most from this season? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.